director of the Planetary Society.
Engineer.
He's an engineer.
You would have thought that there are too many clouds. People didn't realize when you look at the Earth as a on a globe, you don't realize how much water vapor is really in the sky. If you were to reason with my grandfather, I presume he would have believed you. But it is quite a striking thing. This was taken by the Japanese, the Hayabusa spacecraft, almost 2 years ago. And don't worry, in great tradition, you know, it's a Japanese company, it is in high def. Yes. It's a cool picture. So this view of the Earth is something that generations before you did not have. And I hope that it's this kind of view of the Earth that will allow you, dare I say it, change the world. Because no one, you can't get it. What a remote little place the Earth is, really on your own. You've got to look at it in this context. So, okay, I'll tell a little story. Our story begins in the middle of the Pacific Ocean on Wake Island. And Wake Island is, if you go to Hawaii, you go about half that far. And maybe you guys, you have professors that do this. They take the laser pointer and they go like that. Does that help you find it? They think that they're, oh, you see, right, you know, dude, what do you, My father was in law school, and for some reason he didn't like it. Go figure. So we had this idea, this was an unusual thing in this, I'll get a summer job and take a year off from law school. So we went to work on Wake Island as a civilian working for the Navy. And when you flew from California to China, you would fly across this part of the world. So this is my dad. Well, actually, it's a picture of my dad. But he was quite a rock, and he was excited to go to this coral island and have a look around and do some rock hounding while he worked, at a cool summer job out in the middle of the tropics. But he was the quartermaster because he was the college kid. And so if you went from, say, San Francisco to Shanghai or some exotic place, you would stop in Hawaii, and then you would stop on Wake Island in one of these flying boats, the Clipper, a Boeing Clipper. And it's interesting to note that if you've ever tried to land an airplane on the water, it's not as easy as it looks. And these planes, I guess, kind of fell apart, which you don't want, really. Not one of them survived World War II. There's a lot of pieces of them, but not a single plane survived intact. But my dad was a quartermaster, and he would be responsible for how many gallons or pounds or kilos of gas the plane would take. And this is from a book written by the guy, the naval commander at Wake Island. There's no caption, it's not clear, but everybody in my family is pretty sure that's my dad. He talked about it. Yeah, I was working, we're in a swimsuit all summer. And every few days a plane would show up. But for those of you familiar with this part of history, on December 7th, 1941, Wake Island was bombed along with Hawaii and many other targets in the Pacific Ocean by the Japanese military. And you guys, look at it. This is no Facebook, no Twitter, okay? This is how you got the news from the Evening Star newspaper in Washington, D.C., where he and I grew up. And it's a big deal. Battleship sunk, president to address Congress, Britain declares war and stuff like that. I mean, the world was kind of ending. But the newspapers were still produced the way newspapers were produced. I just want to reassure you, on December 8th, they reminded you, only 14 shopping people complain, it's so commercial these days. Back when I was no, it's been going on since the middle of the last century anyway. But they did encourage you to buy war bonds, and invest in the government. The defense of the war. So while my dad was doing this, these guys disappeared. Japanese Navy captured them all, or most of them, and took them to China. But no one knew about it. The radios were destroyed, there was no communication. The Japanese purple code had not been broken. No one knew what happened to these guys. So my mother, through the dumb luck of the universe, was graduated from college in the spring of 1942. The reason my dad went away, by the way, her father, my grandfather, wouldn't let them get married until she was graduated from college. And so the head of Goucher College, back when we had sister schools, was the thing. Goucher was the sister school to Hopkins. Now Goucher is its own liberal arts college in Baltimore. The head of Goucher, President Goucher, was the first president of the Secretary of War, and he apparently said to his cousin, "Do you have any women that can come work on this thing? I can't tell you what it is." So my mother, the family myth is, was recruited because she was good at math and science. And she worked for the Navy on this notorious, infamous thing called the Enigma Code, which was a code that was developed for banks in Germany, but the Nazi political party took all these code machines. And look, with all due respect to the other women in the photo, really, I mean, I'm sure they're all very nice, but really, who's got the best legs? I mean, I'm sure they're all very good. Just being objective. So anyway, this thing went on for 4 years. I don't know if you heard about it. It was a big World War II thing. And so my dad had disappeared. He was in prison camp for 44 months, longer than anybody else from the U.S. And they had no electricity, or very little electricity, and their jewelry was confiscated, their watches and clocks, they had no clocks. So my dad apparently would spend time looking at the night sky. My dad could do 50 constellations. That's a lot. How many can do 50 constellations? How many constellations are there, everybody? Bill is short. It's a nickname. His name's Woody. Guys, how many keys on the piano? 88. So traditionally 88 constellations. All right, so my dad could memorize a lot of stars, and apparently he would set up something every day. A shovel handle was popular, a fence post, and he would use it to reckon time. And the shadow goes due east and west at 6 in the morning. It's the shortest it's going to be at solar noon in the middle of the day. And so he lived through this thing, and he came back obsessed with sundials. So he wrote a book about sundials. He wrote articles for the Washington area newspapers about sundials. He had this invention where you could take your sand dial to the beach, and then you wouldn't have to get sand in your watch. He was given a lifetime membership in the North American Sundial Society. I don't know, you've been to the parties with the accountants. You know how crazy those are. I'm telling you, you go to the sundial party, why? Just a bunch of people standing there and look. No, it's quite a thing. So he designed several sundials and so on. And one of his what happens to you when you get involved in this sundial? It's really everything that you can see. Really should be a sundial. Fire hydrants, telephone pole, pot handle. So I, of course, was unaffected by this, but when I was at the beach this summer in Delaware, I did make a sundial out of a pizza box. Barbecue skewer. And by the way, anything that's on the face of the dial that's not for telling time is its furniture. So this dial is furnished with some happy color pictures. There's a model there, you know. Let me see if I can do this. Sunny hours. Anyway, my dad, I grew up with this, and my father would think this was quite reasonable, you know, instead of like getting tan, we'd make a sundial. So we had this idea, we wrote an article for the Evening Star, where you would turn the Washington Monument into a giant sundial. Come on, people. These plinths, these big rocks out here. So the plinth, if you don't know, fabulous Scrabble word. There's only one vowel. It's the rock that your statue sits on. So the Statue of Liberty's got a heck of a plinth. She's rocking a plinth. So this time of year, like right now, is really good if you are in the Washington, D.C. area the next few months and it's sunny. It's cool because the shadow moves like almost at a walking pace. It's really cool. In the winter, when the sun is very low in the sky, the shadow is really long. And so my father pointed out that when his genius is finally recognized and the Washington Monument is turned into a sundial, we will have to move to the White House. Small price. Now, let's see. Let me get right here. You're kind of taking my word for it, but not quite. So I want you to look right at the base of the Washington Monument, right there, where the concrete skirt is, as they call it. And that shadow is gray. Thank you, Bill. Yes. No, but I'm telling you, the shadow's not just gray. If the lights are, these are quite yellow, but if the lights are just so, you can tell that the shadow is ever so slightly light blue, just a little bit blue. And that blue color comes from the Earth's sky. Now, all of us know intuitively, I mean, everybody's able-bodied, intuitively can tell the difference between daylight and room light. You know, but most people cannot put their finger on it and tell you why. And the reason in large part is because of this blue color. We did not have a word for this in English, so I was forced to make one up. This is what we call, this is what we call cirrulescence, or a tinge of blue. Now, I just want you to know that there is a real word in English, iridescent. That's a tinge of green, but I had to make up this word, a tinge of blue, bluish tinge, cirrulescence. And you say, well, Bill, what does that have to do with anything? It's a great question. So now we will go back to the disco era, 1976. The Viking spacecraft landed on Mars. So this is the planet Mars. And actually, picture of the planet. We have the planet Mars here. You'll notice it. But just while you're noticing things, look, you could walk around here. If you were dressed properly, you could have a picnic. You know, there. And if you go, everybody just remember, you've got to take food and water, but you also have to take something to breathe. And you don't have it there. Not much of it. But there's one more thing about this famous picture that went all around the world, the New York Times, Washington Post, Oslo Register, Papua New Guinea Gazette, whatever. The sky. The sky. Apparently, people looked at this picture for over a day. These are the world's foremost authorities on things. They looked at the shadows, not of the Washington Monument, but the things on the spacecraft, antennae and the little squibs that open these landing gear springs and stuff. And they remarked, I paraphrase, they remarked, huh? And one guy says to the other guy, hey, I don't think the sky is blue. What do you mean? It's a planet. I know, but it's a different planet. So it's not blue. The sky on Mars is not blue. This was an electronic oversight. The sky on Mars is more of this color. Whatever that is. That color there. So it's orange. It's salmon. Taupe. You know where they sell women's stockings? It's one of those in the upper right. I don't wear women's stockings. But I am a huge fan. So, this true color of the sky we know now. But in 1976, there was a little bewilderment, and they never wanted to have this electronic problem again because to people like my father, the rock hounds of the world, you know, you see they walk around like this, and occasionally pick up another rock and bring it home. Anyway, the first thing they look at is the color. They want the color of the rock. So if you get the color wrong, then you kind of make bad conclusions or incorrect conclusions about the composition of this other world. So I was at a meeting at Cornell, in this at Cornell, and they had this there thing, picture thing of that there. And I remarked at some point, hey, what's that? Oh, Bill, that's the photometric calibration target. That is. You don't know. What? So it's the test pattern for the camera. It has these little color squares, little rubber squares of pink and stuff. And the idea is you point the camera at it, and then you can get the colors of the rocks right. So furthermore, wait, there's more. Has a little stick, a little metal post sticking in it to cast a shadow, to look at the shadow there. And by the way, in this light in the oven, the vacuum chamber oven thing, they had lights not unlike these, and we didn't have a word for this, but I think if you look at the shadow on this one, you can see it's a little bit yellow. Yellowish. So I had to make up Xanthidescent. Come on, Xanthidescent's a big one. It's a bit of an axe. So anyway, this went on for a few minutes. I'm reflecting on this reflection and this shadow. And this is many years, you see, after my father had done this work, and my father at this point in the story was no longer living. And it just took me a few minutes, but after a while I was like jumping out of my chair.
You guys, we can make the photometric calibration target into a sundial.
Point out that that was not the reaction I got. The principal investigator of the next Mars rover and rocket scientists and people who got jobs to do. They're looking at me, you know, Phil, it's Mr. Nye, right? You know, we all have PhDs, we're all doctors. Anyway, Mr. Nye, you know, we don't tell time with sundials. Dude. Really? It's the space program.
No, that'll be cool. We can reckon time on another world. It's like guys who speak Klingon. It'll be real.
Well, Steve Squires, the head guy, thought about it, principal investigator, thought about it for a few days, but okay. So there are 2 sundials on Mars. There's more. There will be a third one. The Curiosity rover, MSL, Mars Science Laboratory, leaves in November. The launch period or launch window opens up on Friday after Thanksgiving, and then it arrives next August, Sunday night the 5th. We're going to have a Planet Fest. Anyway, right down here in the corner, careful, there's your Mars dial. And one of the guys who worked on it, Woody Sullivan, really likes the upper lowercase MD, all one word vacationism. So, okay, come on down. So that's Husband Hill, which is named after one of the guys killed in the Columbia Space Shuttle wreck. But it's quite a view. If you were dressed right, you know, it would be a spectacular vista with your Topek room eggshell sky there. And if you look closely at the Mars dial, next time you're there, I believe you can see the taupe ecru orange salmon colored shadow right there. And we did not have this word in English, so I was forced to come up with it. If my father were here, he would remind you that sundials should have a motto. They should give you something to think about. And you'll see sundials, they say, I only count the sunny hours. Life is but a shadow. That's not that hard. But there's one, so Dr. Woodward Sullivan, the astronomer, numerous watching. There's this one in France, and it says in French, every hour injures. The last hour kills. Oh, it's a sunny day. That's great. It's that whole, you know, it's existentialism, the French thing of Camus and the stranger, like life sucks and then you die. The last hour kills. Oh, that's good. No, seriously. We have a motto on the Mars dials, and it is 2 worlds, 1 sun. If you have never thought about about it, I strongly encourage all of you to take a second and think to yourself that shadows on this other world must needs be cast by light from the same life-giving star as shadows on our world. So next time you're outside on a sunny day, which I believe we have scheduled here, just take a second. It's really important. The reason our clocks run clockwise, the reason we divide the day into 12 hours, all this stuff came from sundown. It's quite a thing. You go get your calendar with the firemen with no shirts on. It all came from sundown. Well, I don't know about that part, but the one with the kittens. Okay, so I want to reassure you, taxpayers and voters, I am a mechanical engineer, I have a license, okay? I did do some work on this. I did the vibration analysis on the gnomon. The gnomon is the thing on the sundial that sticks up. Oh yeah, and what I brought to the party, by the way, you guys, at this meeting was when you're near the equator of a round planet, you don't want a triangle sticking up on your sundial, your gnomon. It has to be a symmetrical thing. If you go to the tropics, like Mexico, Hawaii, you'll see the rectangle, or just a post. But in English we call it noon pole, and that's my dad's name. So our gnomon is an important feature, and it can't break loose and bang on the electronics during the 39 Gs of launch and all that stuff. So it's fine. I mean, you can tell the trucker that it's indestructible. However, recently one of you sent me this picture. Yes, it was April 1st. You kooky kids. Your Photoshop, yes. Whoever did it, I want to reassure you, you did get it. I was like, you blow my brains out. All right, well, back on Viking now. Yellow peckerel, eggshell, salmon, burnt orange. The atmospheric pressure on Mars is only 7 millibars. The atmospheric pressure on the Earth is how much anyway? 1,000. 1013 is the gold standard. Anyway, millibars, if you're scoring along with us, or my engineering friends, are no longer permitted under the System International. They have a 10 to the 5th in it. There's 100,000 floating around. So nowadays, the official unit is hectoliters. Exactly. What kind of, yeah. So my proposal to you guys, young people, is we keep hectopascals, but we shorten it to hex. So we'll have 1,000 hex. Only 7.7% of the Earth's atmosphere. Now, these data are not from Viking. These are from the Sojourner rover, which was in the 1997, mid-1990s, when Viking landed in the disco era. Then Sojourner was there. Well, really after punk new wave company, it was sort of after Nirvana. Everything changed. So on Mars, 95% of its thin atmosphere is carbon dioxide. On Earth, 0.03%. 0.03%. 0.03% doesn't sound like much. I mean, I go right along with you. That isn't very much. Bill, 0.03% is the same as 300 parts per million. It's the same number. But that tiny amount of that gas, or tiny fraction of that gas, is what allows us all to live. I mean, everybody eats plants. Even if you're a crazy meat eater, you eat things that eat plants. If you're a fish, you eat fish that eat plankton, which are plants. I mean, your whole world runs on that tiny fraction of that gas. Now, everybody in this room was here when that number, 0.03, rounding to one digit, changed to 0.04. Everybody was here when it went from less than 350, now it's a little over 390 parts per million worldwide. And it varies from place to place on the Earth, but as a first cut, that's pretty good. And that tiny change tiny number is changing the world. And that's what I want you, Stevens Institute people, to change it back. You to fix everything. So now, you got it. So I'm done. I can stop right now. So here is the International Space Station. Actually, once again, a picture. Yeah. It really would not fit in here. And if you showed this to my dad would buy it, but my grandfather maybe not, because it looks like the Earth's out of focus. It's not really out of focus. That's the atmosphere. That's the whole deal, right there. And kind of no matter how you reckon it, the atmosphere is fantastically thin. And as my old Professor Carl Sagan would say, it's like the layer of varnish on a globe. It is a fantastically thin thing. And this idea, I think if everybody in the world could grasp that idea, it would change things. People would realize there is not a lot of room for us between that and the ice of space. And so this appreciation, this thing, this spiritual understanding, is what I like to call your place in space. Does this happen? Your, here wait, okay. So this is me. I'm over here. There's a picture of me on the rim of the Mount St. Helens crater, which is a volcano in Washington State, but it's actually closer to Portland, Oregon than it is to Seattle. And everybody's lying down in this picture, not because we're exhausted losers, but because that right there in front of our chins is the crater rim of this volcano that blew up in 1980. So if you stand like this, it's 1,000 feet straight down. Whoa. I'm good. And furthermore, this material is what people call volcanic ash. There's a fabulous Scandinavian word for it, screed. The screed is just like ball bearings. So you're like, and it's 1,000 feet. Whoa, I'm good. I'm gonna lie down. But from this vantage point, you can take this picture, and that's Mount Rainier off in the distance. Beautiful thing. Anybody from Washington State? Woo! It's on the license plate. Mount Rainier rules. Mount Rainier does kind of rule. So you go, well, that's a fabulous picture of Mount Rainier, Bill. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. But look closely. There's a layer of smog right there. And that smog, you think you're out in the wilderness. You've been hiking uphill in the mountain, you've been picking up snow and eating it with your hands, and you're watching deer cavort. You climb up and there's just rocks and snow, buggy timberline. Hey man, I'm in the wilderness, and then you get up there and there's this layer of smog. And that smog sloshes in from Portland and Seattle, from medium-sized cities in the Pacific Northwest. And I mention this because it is this effect of humans on the atmosphere that is changing the world. Now, I know many of you like Back to the Future, Back to the Tech, and I know some of you watched Uncle Bill on the SITTV. Really done much. Neither guy really. So we would look things up in the video encyclopedia, and whenever I do my old man voice, it's really inspired by Christopher Lloyd and Scott Brown. And I mention that because I was here in New York City in 1965 at the World's Fair, and there was a total board of the U.S. population. The U.S. population at the time was less than 200 million. Now, what's the world's most populous nation? China. Second most populous? India. Third most populous? United States. So when I was young, it was fewer than 200 million. It wasn't even 195 million. Now, well over 300 and not getting any smaller. We went to the tote board at the World's Fair, my father and I, my family, and they had the U.S. population there. Then there was this other one at the United Nations that had the world's population. The world's population in 1965, this was my dad, the sundial guy with the book. And we're driving along the road, this highway, Route 40 between Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, and he's taking pictures of the odometer of the car as it changes from 99,999 to 100,000. And the cop comes in, sir, it's a highway, what are you doing? Take a picture of the, really, sir, please. Okay, that's great. Keep it moving. And so we were heartbroken in a way. We missed the tote board at the United Nations changing from 2,999,999,999 people in the world to 3 billion. So in 1965, in my lifetime, there were 3 billion people. Today, at noon, your time, on the airplane, the magic of the internet from a plane, I captured this number. It's estimated 6.8, almost 6.9 billion people. By Halloween, many people estimate it will cross 7. If not by Halloween, by Thanksgiving. 7 billion people living in that thin atmosphere. And I think if everybody could just get their brains around that, we would all work together and dare to say, change the world. So, this is a graph depicting the world's temperature, overall estimated, as a function of time starting back in the 1850s. And every time there's a big volcano, Krakatoa was a big deal, every time there's a big volcano, the world cools off. And these data are collected from the ice in Antarctica and the Siberian Peninsula, Vostok Peninsula, Kamchatka Peninsula, and tree rings, the width of tree rings, and the pollen count and lake bed sediments. And so when you estimate the temperature of the world, every time a big volcano goes off, the world cools off a little bit. I kind of remember this as a kid, but I do remember very well, because we're living in the Northwest when Mount St. Helens went off, and you'll notice the world didn't cool off at all from Mount St. Helens, because it's not in the tropics. If you're a volcano and you want to cool the world off, you should move to the tropics. But anyway, what happens is it spews all this stuff in the air, reflects sunlight into space, and the world cools off a little bit for a few years. But notice, by this reckoning, even though the world cools off at the volcanoes, the world is getting warmer and warmer. So these data are estimates of what will happen if everybody does what they said they were going to do at the Kyoto Protocols, with the Kyoto Protocols. This one is if a lot of people do it, but not everyone. And the one on top is if nobody does no one, pointing to double negative for comedic effect. So the world is getting warmer, and this, my friends, is going to be your biggest hassle. The 10 warmest years on record were up through 2009. But everybody thinks that by the time 2011 is done, it will be the warmest of the 12 most recent years. They're still accumulating data, but the world has warmed up since records were kept in the 1800s about 0.7 Celsius, over a degree Fahrenheit. Now, it doesn't sound like much, a degree Fahrenheit. What the heck? 0.7 Celsius, blah. But if you think of the Earth as a big disk, occluding sunlight, blocking sunlight in space, it takes a heck of a lot of heat to heat that thing up close to a degree Celsius. Billions and billions of kilowatts of BTUs, huge amount. So that energy, that heat, is not being radiated into space the way it was So, what to do? A, run in circles, scream. You try it. But here's a few things that I'm doing. This is me, picture of me. In Southern California. I live like totally like in the valley. I do, that's not where I live. And so it's sunny, and I have 4 kilowatts of solar panels. Those are in the background. I would have more, that's my garage roof. I would have more solar panels, but my neighbor's house shades my house quite a bit. So when they leave town, I think I'm going to have to. What? Easy to ask forgiveness and permission. This is not rocket surgery. You can do this. And here's my dome skylight. And what looks like gray or whatever with some fluorescence is a Fresnel lens, like the lenses on these lights. It's when the sun's low in the sky, it directs light down this super shiny tube all the time, even in the morning and evening. Much more light than a conventional skylight. And then here in the foreground is my solar hot water system. Now, everybody, solar hot water system. There are pipes painted black, and they get hot. The heat is free. It's free. I don't pay for the heat. I want one of you. Would you please go to the solar hot water business? You would, yes, you would change the world. Yes, you would. But you also rich. Bill, great. Why don't you go into solar hot water? Well, maybe I will. I'm doing this other thing. What we need is a business person. It's just plumbing. I mean, who's better at plumbing than the United States? I mean, Holland. I don't know. We should just be taken over with this thing. All right. People are going to come to you when you're graduated from school and before with what I'm going to call crazy ideas. Okay, I got it. We're gonna be like a volcano, and we're gonna throw sulfur dioxide up into the sky, just like a volcano, and it's gonna reflect light into space, and then the Earth will cool. Unless it rains, then it's going to rain and let mild sulfuric acid. We'll have ships, and they will make clouds. Dude, clouds are way up there. Your ships are, dude. Well, these will be really tall. They're not going to be that tall. Okay, wait. We're going to take iron and throw it in the ocean, and it'll fertilize algae, and then it will soak up carbon dioxide, and then sink to the bottom of the sea. It's going to be great. We'll turn the world's ocean into a giant layer of pond scum. Okay, I don't know about that. Okay, so there are a lot of crazy... Oh, I know. We'll put reflectors in space. It's very inexpensive. Nothing will go wrong. I mean, I'm a big space guy, but that is a difficult problem. With all that said, I just want to point this one thing out that may be crazy. This guy is a little unusual, Dr. Sykes. He's a little bit of an odd guy. That's coming from me. But notice this motorboat in Belize, in a lagoon. The lagoon's very deep, and the water soaks up red light, and it turns this dark blue. Very serialistic. But then behind the motorboat is this wake of white bubbles, right? So the white bubbles are reflecting light. So what if we have little bubbles, these tiny bubbles behind the boat, okay, and they would then reflect sun. I've seen this stuff. If you have like this vial of seawater and this vial of seawater and this one has bubbles and this one doesn't. You have to kind of hold them next to each other to even tell the difference. It's quite subtle. So this idea, of all the crazy ideas that I've come up with, maybe we would one day have the World Bubble Council. Ecosystems and the sea jellies will kill everyone. It's going to be an idea like that, and you guys, as taxpayers and voters, are going to have to figure it out. That's what I want you to do. I want you, dare I say it, change the world. When I was young, I was a little kid, I admired this plane. This is the Sky Streak. And they made 3 of them, and they were going to break the sound barrier. Now look, come on, you guys. They painted a fighter plane red. I don't know if it's not red, is it? You got a dead gun out there. They painted, take my word for it, it was red. And it was going to break the sound barrier, but you don't have to know that much about airplanes. Look at the tail. The tail's not that big. And that was to cut aerodynamic drag. Tuck your arms in when you die. But it turns out when you do that to it a little too much, it doesn't steer. No, it's okay. So, anyway, I really admire this plane. They crashed a couple of them, but they were cool. They were going to break the sound barrier, but the Bell X1, Chuck Yeager, needed. But anyway, I've had a Sky Streak myself. The Sky Streak is still made. And I just want you to know I had a moment, okay? If you've ever flown these aircraft or similar style, you wind up the motor, as they call it, the rubber band, you and I would call it, and you throw it and it goes like that. Okay, then you're a little kid, you're focused, you want at one time, all right, my older brother showed me how to lubricate the rubber motor with dishwashing liquid. And wound that thing up, and it was a little kid. Focused. Wound it up 350 times. And I threw it, and it made 3 perfect turns. Just whoa. And it came back to me like a boomerang in a Bugs Bunny cartoon. Oh my, and that's when I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. I'm going to be an engineer. I hope you guys have had a moment like that. Think about it. There was some time when you realized with science, more importantly perhaps engineering, you could control things, you could predict the future, you could use science, your understanding of nature to build things and solve problems. When I delivered the Washington Post as a kid, from time to time, Ripley's Believe It or Not would run this story. Insects, which have been flying for some 350 million years. It's not the same insect. Defy the laws of aerodynamics. The bumblebee, considering its size and shape, is an aerodynamic misfit and should be unable to fly. Now, even as a little kid, delivering the Washington Post, I realized, I spent time, I looked at it, I watched them. Bees fly fine. Bees are good at it. They may violate your theory of aerodynamics, but they've got something figured out that you don't. And so, indeed, it wasn't until very recently that people understood how bees actually do fly. They have, they're Hymenoptera, they got 4 wings, they got little halt ears, and they create some kooky vortices that allow the downstroke to be very efficient. And by the way, bees take their thorax and they crank it up, and they'll let it go. They get 40 or 50 flaps for every wind-up. And it's cool. And then, by the way, all the bees that you see are girl bees, little workers. You can, it's not, and then they wear out after you crank your thorax for 6 weeks. I know. That's their bid. They share bees with the queen or something. They're motivated. So, there are things that you are absolutely sure of, you are certain that are wrong. And you know what those things are? Nobody does. But you are going to figure it out. There are things that you're certain of that just are not right. Nowadays, I have a day job as executive director of the Planetary Society. Hey, is that magazine right here? Do we lose that? All right. Oh, here we go. Cool. So, by the way, if you guys ever decide to get a career in television and you're doing ads for this magazine, it's called The Hero. This is the hero of the ad. So, thanks, Planetary Society magazine! Okay. But anyway, at the Planetary Society, we pursue odd little things in space exploration. We envision a better future through the passion, beauty, and joy of science and the exploration of space. So recently, the Pioneer spacecraft, which were launched sort of during Motown, 1972, winter of 72, 73. One spacecraft went out of the solar system in the plane of the solar system. The other one went north, straight up. And they are identical spacecraft to the extent that that's possible. And these are the famous spacecraft that first carried this plaque. I don't know if you've heard about this gold plaque. And my old professor, Carl Sagan, was very involved in this. So it's very easy. An alien will find it, and they'll look at these two circles here and realize that that represents a hydrogen atom. And these will be the binary counts of hydrogen of time measured in hydrogen atoms resonances to the nearby pulsars, and it'll be very straightforward for any that's hydrogen atom, binary pulsars, that's where this came from. And we see readily the sun and the 9 planets back when we had those representing how it came north out of the solar system. And anybody can figure that out. And you guys weren't around for this, but there was controversy. You are sending pornography into space. I think it's going to be okay. Two European people outline, okay, whatever. What is that hand thing? What is that? It's universal breeding. Oh, okay, we'll see when they show up. When you put a motto on the sundial, the Mars dial, you're doing it for you. You know, the message is for you. If somebody finds it and sends it back, then it's cool. But this does give you pause for thought about your place in space. But the other significant thing about the Pioneer spacecraft, I just want to tell you while you're all here this year, is they are not as far from the Earth as people thought they should be, by reasonable calculations. Put it on top of a rocket, and you shoot the rocket up, and you're a rocket scientist. You keep careful records of how much fuel it has and how fast it's going, and you have radar, and you're watching it. Woo, 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 beep, 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 beep. I paraphrased. They're about 400,000 kilometers closer to the Earth than they should be, or than you would expect them to be. And so there were several years where people were running around in circles. There's a new physics. There's something that we do not understand beyond relativity that's holding these spacecraft back. Oh my goodness, this is fabulous. And so the Planetary Society, which I mentioned earlier, had a fund. We got people, 30,000 members around the world, sent us a little bit of money, and we went to Jet Propulsion Lab, and these records, these computer records about these spacecraft, or this old quadrature videotape, ancient things. And they were in a cardboard box, like off in the corner. And we got the scientists who were still alive, who could go through it and figure out, there were a lot of data missing. You know, videotape loses, it degrades when you leave it in a cardboard box in a hot room for several years. But they figured it out, and there's a couple things about it. The spacecraft each have a radiothermoelectric generator, a piece of plutonium that is hot. And it heats up these thermocouples, and they make enough electricity to keep the thing going way, way out beyond what our solar panels would do. And so everybody now is pretty confident that the photons of heat, the infrared photons coming off the front of the spacecraft, have enough momentum to hold the thing back. And the other thing that they were able to deduce or determine was it's not being held back relative to the sun. It's being held back relative to the Earth. So this is a famous picture from Seattle, where I used to live. And it was taken by the flight engineer on the 707 airplane. You know, there's a 787 now, 777, 777. Well, there's 707. It was the first of the Boeing jet airliners. And before they had 707s, it was called the Dash 80. Before they had the 700 series. And I hope you'll just take a second and notice this is the city of Seattle below the plane. And the plane is upside down. Now, I don't know how many airliners you've been on, but they generally don't go upside down, in general. When they do, it's usually catastrophic. So the guy who did this was a guy named Tex Johnson. He was a very well-known Seattle celebrity. And he affected that accent that all those guys, Chuck Yeager from The Right Stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna fly this airplane and I'm gonna do a barrel roll with it.
There's a film, you can see, it's up here, it's really small. It's like the Zapruder film where Kennedy was suppressed, you know. The guy, you have to kind of go uphill with your plane. You have to climb over it, and then, I paraphrase. And he did what they call a ballistic roll, but you don't spill the coffee. Like you've been on a roller coaster where it goes in. So, woo! So he lands the plane, and the Boeing executives are a little concerned. Dude, Mr. Johnson.
What are you doing?
He said, I'm selling airplanes. You know, he wanted to impress the world with this new Boeing product. But he's also supposed to have said, one test is worth 1,000 expert opinions.
And that, my friends,
those are words to live by. If the theory disagrees with the experiment, you've got to respect the facts. You just can't just pretend the theory is going to be fine. So, this sort of thinking that I really want you to have as you go through your career as scientists, engineers, musicians, whatever it is you're going to do when you become a responsible citizen, I want you to remember when people tell you that it violates the theory, it may be not violating anything, it's just the theory that sucks. So, you'll often hear people say, by the way, this is the Apollo 11 that went to the moon. There's a picture that went to the moon. And we just want you to see how pervasive this thinking was. Look, here's a game. Rockets to the moon, and I'll show you. It's tiny. And I want to remind you, it's fun to play. You probably tried one, no fun to play. But you probably use this expression yourself.
if they can put a man on the moon, why can't they blank?
Well, there's a reason. I'll tell you. And you are living through an important political time with respect to spaceflight right now. The interstate highway system has reckoned in 2010 dollars, cost about $114 billion. $114 billion. The Panama Canal, in the same numbers, the same standard, 2010, $8 billion. $8 billion. Putting 12 people on the moon in 2010 dollars, $151 billion. Yes, if you spend 1.5 interstate highway systems, you can put 12 people just about anywhere. The interstate highway system is big, and they still use it. Maybe you've seen it. So the expectation that people have of our technology, people forget just how much people spend on it. And that's cool. And that won or contributed in many ways to the tapering off or the ending of what everybody called the Cold War, where the former Soviet Union and the United States were competing to get people on the moon. Oh, by the way, you know, former Soviet Union, first cameras on the moon, first soft landing on the moon, first moon rocks were brought back by a robot, a spacecraft built by the Russian Federal Space Agency, or the Soviet Federal Space Agency. But that was until people got there that everybody like totally freaked. Pulled all of that in. So at the Planetary Society, we are doing what we can to do more with less. This is a Martian meteorite landed in India, and it has little pits in it. So if you go to a place where meteorites land, like in Antarctica, you pick them up, sometimes you find amino acids, complicated chemical chains are still in the meteorite. They didn't break down when it's going through the atmosphere. So the Planetary Society built this kooky thing we call the Life Living Interplanetary Flight Experiment. And it's a little titanium puck. And we have put in some well-characterized microbes and some happy little water bears. These are tardigrades. Oh, tardigrades. I got it. No, really, I didn't blow it. Yes, I did. I just said the same about the meteorite thing. Well-characterized microbes. And so 30,000 people around the world, which I think is kind of cool, gave us money, and it's going to launch on this Russian mission, which leaves in November. You can go to Mars about every 26 months, every year and a little, 2 years and a little bit. And so if you guys send us, if you send us money, we send you a happy plush toy. And if we get enough of it, even if you are freeze-dried and packed in polyimide capsule laser sealed, when you go in space, you want a space helmet. So we're going to see if they make it, because here's the thing. That meteorite is clearly from Mars. You can see the chemical composition under the shot. You have a big impact. You break it open at this little vacuum chamber in Huntsville, Alabama, and bubbles of Martian atmosphere come out. It's quite an astonishing thing. Is it possible that life started on Mars and then found its way here, and we are all? It's not crazy. So we are trying. And I spoke with the Planetary Protection Officer at NASA. This is somebody responsible for keeping us from violating the Prime Directive. You see the Star Trek people really funny. Anyway, you don't need to do the test. This can be fine. Those microbes are going to be fine. I realized it was a good idea. Because they didn't think. So we're going to try this. Everybody thinks the cold of space will not affect them. It's the radiation. Nobody knows if they'll make it. So another thing we're doing at the Planetary Society is the solar sail. This is a spacecraft pushed through space by sunlight, photons. Wait a minute, Bill. Photons have no mass. How can they have momentum? That's crazy. Well, of course you may be right. But let's do this. Everybody knows E equals mc squared. If we divide both sides by the speed of light, c, then you get a little expression mc, which is kind of like momentum. So it turns out sunlight, or light, conveys a tiny bit of momentum. It's relativity. You need Planck's constant. You have to believe in the quantum and all that. It's a real thing. So we got 30,000 people around the world, which is kind of cool. So we're trying to fly this next year. We need to get a ride, as the saying goes. If anybody has a rocket going medium Earth orbit, 40 kilometers or so of that, we're in. So I mention this because this could be the future of space flight. Like, we may get rockets in space and then use solar sails to push them to the moon, and then there's this perfect mission where we keep an eye on the weather on the sun. Where, when there's a big magnetic storm there, it screws up our communications. So this is Mars again, and what's a picture? And on the two Mars docks, along with the motto, in very, very small letters, it says, we built these spacecraft in our year 2003. The MSL says, we built these spacecraft in our year 2010, 2011, and arrived here in 2012, and so on. We built these cameras, and we built these instruments to calibrate our cameras to look for signs of water life, to learn about Mars' past, prepare for our future. And then it says, on the last of the 4 little things, it says, to those who visit here, we wish a safe journey into the joy of discovery.
That, my friends, is the essence of this science business,
is the joy of discovery, the joy of knowing. So I encourage you, everywhere you go, you'll meet people who go, that's just science. Just science? People, that's the best idea humans have ever had. That's what leads to the joy of knowing. That's what makes it exciting to be a person. I mean, it's one of the things. It makes it exciting to be a person. Earlier this summer, a guy named Bill Scott died, but he had a big hit with the revolution will not be televised. And the idea was the government did not control the revolution. The man would not be able to control the media and then control the people. The revolution would not be televised. But it turns out, spiritually perhaps correct, but the revolution is being televised. You are living at a time where electronic media, Facebook, Twitter, make this thing in Egypt like everybody knows about. In fact, if it's not televised, it's where it doesn't count. Now, there was no revolution. I didn't see any tweet about it. You guys, the world is changing so fast. And it's because of our speed of communication. When my grandfather went into World War I, he put a gas mask on himself and a gas mask on his horse. When there was a fire on Berkeley Place in Baltimore, Maryland, the fire truck showed up pulled by horses. But in 20 years after that, nobody did anything like that with a horse. It all changed in a blink. And those people did not have the internet. I know what you're thinking. What did they do all day? The world changed like that. Anybody who was serious about fighting a battle did not use a horse if you had a gas-powered motor. This is Saturn, actually. And it's an astonishing picture taken by the Cassini spacecraft. You get out past Saturn, point the camera back toward the sun, peeking around there about 7 o'clock. The only night on Saturn is from the shadow of those rings. The atmosphere conducts so much light or pushes so much light around. And the rings are just, they're less than paper thin around a baseball. They're just like, it's astonishingly beautiful things orbiting this world. But if you look closely, this is also a picture of the Earth. The Earth is right there. And if we go a few thousand kilometers off that way, take the same picture, leave the shutter open a long time, there's the Earth. So people, just look at this picture. There is no cavalry coming over the hill. I mean, this is it. Everybody who's ever lived, every poison ivy vine, every sea jelly, every bacterium that lives in a nuclear reactor, every tardigrade, even the alien who was my old boss. Everybody lives on this little dot, what my old professor called a pale blue dot. So I often think about this, guys. My third grade teacher, Mrs. Cochran, told us there are more stars in the sky than there are grains of sand on the beach. No. I remember thinking, lady, have you ever been to a beach? I mean, there is a lot of sand. Left and right. This was in Delaware. Not far from, it's 1,000 nautical miles in each direction. There's nothing but sand. You turn around, there's more sand. The tide goes out, there's sand. Shuffle your feet, there's sand. Who knows how far it goes down? Sand, sand, sand. I would not have said it this way. But I was thinking, Mrs. Cochran, are you high? There's no way. Come on. Really. But apparently there are more stars than all of that. More stars than all of that. So I'm on the beach, and the sun's kind of going down. I'm looking at my shadow. I'm looking at the sun. I'm looking out at the sea. where you realize you go fishing with your uncle and you get out just 15, 17 nautical miles and there's no land. You could be in the middle of any place and you start to feel insignificant. You start to feel like a grain of sand. You're just a speck, standing here with the specks. And then you start to have an understanding of your place in space and you're just standing on a speck, really, which orbits the sun, not even shown in this big sun, completely unremarkable star. Nothing special about the sun. I'm a speck on a speck, orbiting a speck, with all these other specks in the middle of specklessness. I suck. But then with my brain, which is only this big, and my old boss, of course. But it's smaller, but with your brain, you can imagine all of that. With your brain, you can know your place in space. With your brain, you can, dare I say it, change the world. Thank you all very much. Thank you. That's a great question, and we kind of need interns that have to think it over. After the first year, we use it. Plus, weren't you in school, young man? So next question, let's see. Man with lab coat, man with bow tie, yes! Lab coat and bow tie, show the crowd. They can't all see. My most satisfying moment in the career of academia and science. Wow. You have to pick. See, if you guys, how many people are planning to finish their engineering degree and then become a dancer on Broadway? So anyway, when you do that, you never say your favorite partner, because then they're going to think you don't like the other one. So. Did you say most satisfying moment? Boy, there have been a couple of good ones. Just, I'll tell you, guys, it's every time one of you comes up to me and says, the reason I became an engineer or a physician or computer scientist or whatever is because you watched my show. That means, I cannot tell you, it means so much to me. The planetary side of your website, we're going to have some kooky little videos. They're going to be in Times Square. A cycle, the 8-minute cycle. And sponsored by Toshiba and the National Science Teachers Association. Big fun. All right, that's a good question. I'm a little choked up. That's good. Who else? Who else? Oh, oh man, no, man, let's go over here, man in the balloon.
How many bow ties do you have?
How many bow ties? You know, I don't know, but it's more than 200. I started wearing them when I was in high school. Where I went to school, there was this tradition where something called the girls' athletic banquet, where the boys wait on the girls. This is before you're called men and women. And so I said to my buddies, if we're going to be waiters, we should dress like it was for fun. So my dad showed me how to tie a bow tie, and he told me this story. You can decide whether or not this is the truth. This will exercise your critical thinking skills. His father, my grandfather, not this guy, but one guy on my father's side, was in the Rotary. You know, there's a community service thing. So they had a convention in Philadelphia. My understanding was it was on purpose in Philadelphia. Even then, you rented a tuxedo, even back in the day, at the turn of the last century. And it came with a tie. You didn't know how to tie it. So we just took a chance, went to the hotel room next door. This is a story. You know, can you help me? Yes, I can help you tie your tie. Lie down on the bed. Okay. So my grandfather lay on the bed, and the guy said you have tied a perfect knot. Thank you. Why did I lie down on the bed? Oh, I'm an undertaker. Anyway, my father was also very good with knots. And I recommend bow ties. They do not slip into your soup. They do not flop into your flask. And people that you're recognizable, which that's a mix. So let's see, we'll go to the balcony there, flying here in person.
What do you think about the CERN lab data about the neutrinos?
Oh, the CERN lab, yes. The Center for Nuclear Research may have found particles going faster than light. It could. Change the word. It could end up like the Pioneer anomaly, as they call it, where it's actually explained by conventional physics. And this timekeeping is the problem. Timekeeping, my friends, did I mention sundials earlier? Timekeeping is quite an amazing thing. And, you know, my grandfather grew up with no relativity. I mean, even when it was discovered, people sort of didn't trust it for a long, long time. Now, every time you use your cell phone, every time you use global positioning, you're relying on satellites and a system that needs both special relativity and general relativity. The speed of the spacecraft over the Earth and the speed of time as affected by the Earth's gravity. So there may be a discovery that will change the world. Now, I am from the U.S. I grew up in the United States. I mention this because I am biased. I can't help it. Oh, by the way, there was 20 minutes there, they wanted Arnold Schwarzenegger to be president. You guys can't do that. And if the founding fathers sort of realized this, like if it's Austria versus the U.S. in the World Cup, he's going to root for Austria because he wrote it. It's not bad. It's just it's how it is. It's just how I root for the Washington Nationals. The Nationals. It's a minor league team. All right, so anyway, being from the U.S., I remember very well when there was this thing, we were going to build a superconducting super collider, the SCSC. And people decided not to do it because the physicists, people that eventually kind of became my colleagues, went to Congress, and the Congress would say, what are you guys going to do with this big superconductor? This thing was going to be as big as Texas, okay, a giant ring of magnets to shoot protons around, big fun. And the physicists went on about the xenon particle and the Higgs boson and baryon interactions that produce fermions and blah, blah, blah. These guys are, no, we're going to build this because we're going to understand the next secret of the universe. That's why we're building it. Anyway, so in CERN, in Switzerland, they have done it. They're looking for the next secret of the universe. So my friends, there is a time right now where people are talking about canceling a large part of the space program in the United States. Now, there's got to be cuts. Okay, cut. The world's economy's gone to heck. Okay. But the next things that will be discovered in space are going to be connected to those perhaps faster than light particles. And the great thing I always say about space exploration, it brings out the best in us. And when we try to put these things out there and make these extraordinary discoveries like this picture, it changes the world. So these guys are going to change the world. You guys, I was in college when the faster than light tons were found. I remind you all that when you were in elementary school, everybody acknowledged that the universe was expanding. The Big Bang discovered in the 1920s by Hubble, Felix, everything's expanding. Well, about 2004 or so, people proved that it's not only expanding, it's accelerating. And do you know why? Nobody knows why. It may be connected to these things, and there may be dark energy, dark matter, there may be particles of dark comets that are exchanged in some exotic way, and we may discover energies that will change the world. So I'm open-minded but skeptical. People have tested relativity all kinds of different ways for about a century, and it always comes out that it's really relativity. And if it's a timekeeping problem, that can really affect everything. I mean, the exquisite degree that you have to keep time to get that experiment to show up, that result to show up, could really be an error. But let's see. Let's see if it's repeatable. Very exciting. It's exciting. Left-timers. Cool. All right, another question. Sorry. In the middle in gray, yes.
What is your favorite Star Trek series?
My favorite Star Trek series. Okay, so in the same way I still root for the national. I grew up with the original. There's nothing. I can't help it. Well, that first Star Trek, you guys, really. You watch those guys. They're pretending to be on a spaceship. Cardboard wall. They're so committed. It's not a stuff. We're so committed. Captain Kirk talking to computers. You have killed. You murdered. And then the computer blows itself up. That's not easy. And you gotta respect those guys. I mean, that was really, it changed the world. And we all accepted, the first cell phones flipped open like communicators, photon torpedoes. It was based on really forward-thinking science. Antimatter held in a magnetic bottle. That's all we do. That's routine now. So I grew up with the first one. I don't know any better. But did anybody get involved with Master and Commander, and anybody started reading those books? Did you see the movie? It's the same thing. There's 20 of these books. And how many people will take heroin? It's the same. You read the first one, and then you just I mention it because it's the same two guys. It's the captain and the doctor. It's the captain and Spock. It's cool. All right, another question. Sorry, excellent question. Yes, here.
All right. Hi, Bill.
Hi, Rogers.
I identify as a skeptic. First off, I loved you on the Trip Attack from the Universe years ago.
Thank you. You're a skeptic. Right on.
Yes.
Are you a skeptic? Go ahead. So you.
I
Yes.
it's hard to get my peers to think critically about things like homeopathy or acupuncture. The list goes on.
Homeopathy, acupuncture, angels,
Yeah, all like this.
psychic powers, astrology. These things in the skeptic community, these are all closely related. Because apparently, we have beliefs and then we just shape the world to fit the beliefs. Overcoming that inherent belief is really hard. Did you have a question?
Yeah, just how do you think it would be easier to communicate critical thinking and logic and ideas with my peers?
How would you communicate logic and critical thinking with your peers? You mean the stupid ones? Like, there's so many coincidences. How many times are you thinking about someone and then they call you on the phone or they send you a text with them? How many times are you thinking, wonder when that bus will ever get here, and it shows up? There are enough coincidences to really affect the way you view the world. So in science, our idea is to make predictions and then have them come true, and if they don't come true, then you change what you predict. Changing what you predict is really hard. So my first piece of advice is, don't confuse skepticism with cynicism. Don't be cynical. Don't be like, oh, what? Don't be, oh, what? What we all do is go into like the other person is badly thinking. But if you said to me 2 weeks ago that I got particles that go faster than light, I'd go, no, you don't. Another question. Oh, there, shot up into my pillow.
What's your favorite science experiment?
My favorite science experiment. So I'm never really going to say. However, I really kind of never get tired of vinegar and baking soda. It's the experiment where I don't know what's going to happen, which is true. So I like to call those things demonstrations. Like when we mix vinegar and baking soda, I hope we get carbon dioxide gas and the balloon inflates or whatever. But that is a pretty great. And then collapsing an oil drum with ice water is pretty great. That's also pretty good. Anytime you can blow stuff up. How did the Bill Nye come to be? Yeah. Well, it's a long story. When I was in college, my freshman roommate had this exotic new thing. Oh yeah, at this point in our story, the guy who had been my freshman roommate was now a friend of mine, but he lived behind me. He went into material science and I went into mechanical engineering, and he had cable television. So he came hurrying to my house. You gotta see this, you gotta see this. And it was Steve Martin as a stand-up comic at the boarding house. And it's a nightclub that's still there in San Francisco. Look at this guy's just like you, man. And so a year later, I won the Steve Martin Lookalike contest in Seattle. I didn't win the national one. That guy kind of looked like Steve Martin. He was from Nashville to play the manager. But after that, and I didn't take it that seriously, really. After that, I started doing stand-up comedy. Oh, and my claim is that I understood what Steve Martin was driving at better than the other people. Steve Martin's thing is, what's the funniest moment in your life? Is when somebody says, well, you had to be there, right? So it's when you choose to laugh. So the idea is to create this comic tension, and then the audience just decides to laugh. So I started doing stand-up comedy in Seattle. This guy was the head of the NBC affiliate, the program director, Bob Jones, but that's his real name. He said, I want to have a comedy show. So I started submitting jokes. And then Sunday, everybody, is the anniversary of the day I quit my job, October 3rd, 1986. I decided to write jokes full time. I was working on a drawing board. At this point in our story, at Sunstrand Data Control, made accelerometers for autopilots. They detect the moon going by every day, 3 micrometers. And I quit that and started writing jokes. And then it took several years after that. I was on the show, this guy, you wouldn't remember this, but there was somebody, a woman named Rita Jenrette, who was notorious, famous for having sex on the steps of the U.S. Capitol. But here's the crazy part. She's having sex with her own husband. So out there. So, can you imagine? Like, wow. And she'd written a book. She'd written a book, and this is in the day. She was traveling the country, hawking her book. And she canceled it at the last minute. And the head of the show, a guy named Ross Schaefer, who's still a dear friend of mine, said, Bill, why don't you do that stuff you're always talking about, you know, at the Science Center? You know, you could be, you know, I don't know, you could be Bill Nye the Science Guy or something. That's it. I did the household uses of liquid nitrogen. Because you have liquid nitrogen around anyway. If you've never done this, I spent a lot of time. I used to volunteer at the Science Center, so you roast marshmallows in liquid nitrogen, you chew them, and steam comes out of your nose. So it's like here, like, it's really impressive. So then after that, I did all these Science Guy bits, and then I met some other producers, and we made a pilot, and PBS liked it, and then we made 20 shows, and then you're all here. I tell everybody, there's no big break. It's just breaks. There's really no big break. You just kind of be ready for the ground ball anytime, or the short fly ball. So 3 more and I'll go. Okay, 3 more. Okay. I haven't shut up. We'll start here. Straight jacket.
You have published 3 books you wanted everyone to read. What would they be?
3 books I want everyone to read. The first one is The Elements of Style. I stand by that, and my heart breaks every day. Every day I read, I think about the essay that E.B. White wrote for the beginning of that. Does everybody know this book? It's this big, a little book. You can get it at any bookstore, it's still in print. And E.B. White, by the way, not only before Half-Blood Prince, what's his name? Harry Potter. Before Harry Potter, the most popular children's book written in English was Charlotte's Web, written by E.B. White, who not only wrote Charlotte's Web, he was also the editor of the New York Times. And by the way, you guys know Chitty Chitty Bang Bang? Yeah! You know who wrote that? It was Ian Fleming, the guy who created James Bond. He's just a smart guy. I will never write anything as good as the opening of Elements of Style. I just got to let go. I thought I'd written some cool stuff, but I just got to let go. We've had to have 2 more books. Oh, man. There's a lot of books. The other thing I say, read the dictionary. You know, pick a dictionary. Geez, I got to pick a book. Well, maybe Howard and Dresden, physics, fundamentals of physics. Well, you really know how to party. Stop me, man. I'm going to have to give that some thought. Shakespeare, pick complete works of Shakespeare. No, the guy gave it a lot of thought, whoever he was. Okay, 2 more, sorry. Okay, you got a tie, I'm going to go for you, and then we'll go 1 more in development. Yes. What do we need? $1 million. Go ahead. What do we need to change the world? Everything all at once. I'm not joking. Okay. If you become a politician, somebody's going to say to you, do you want to build a new baseball stadium? Somebody else is going to say to you, we want to raise teacher salaries so they can be the software engineers in the football field. I hope you get the right answer. Raise the teacher salary. But that's not how it is. You've got to do the baseball stadium and the teacher salary and the farmer's market and reduce the crime on the subway and get the graffiti. You've got to do everything all at once. And I mention this, you guys, because let me tell you this. You've got to vote. Okay, if you don't vote, would you please just shut up? Voting is all we get. It's not much, but it's all we get. So you've got to do it. Then the big thing for me is we have to not just do less. See, I grew up with Earth Day. I went to the first Earth Day. Check this out, people. I rode my bicycle to to the Washington Monument, locked it to one of the flagpoles for the first Earth Day in 1970. In 1970! And in those days, everybody wanted you to do less. We want you to drive your car less. We want you to use less clean water. So yes, so wear dirty clothes. And if you can, really just don't eat. Humans are bad for the ecosystem. Humans are bad, don't eat. Just kill yourself. This turns out to be very unpopular. That's what people want to do. So the key is not to do less. I mean, that's a good idea. The key to the future is doing more with less. And to me, the big change, if somebody can find a way to store electricity. Store electricity in a new Super Sexmobile battery. Or I'm all hot for the hot salt thing, where you have molten salt underground. As long as your pipes don't freeze, you store heat down there all night, run your turbine all night, the sun comes out and heat it up again. That's a good idea. If you can find a better way or a good way to store huge amounts of energy, electrical energy, you will get rich. And then the other thing is transportation. New York is pretty good, but our transportation systems are generally so inefficient. So, I mean, one person in every car driving one of those places. There's an opportunity, you guys. Somebody's going to get rich. I hope it's you. Okay, the last question. Last question is going to be in the ballot. Have you guys reached a consensus? Okay, he's pointing to consensus. Is it working? Yes, they're all pointing to you, yes.
Okay.
Last question, this is it.
What technological advancement?
Okay, hold on, I was making noise. Go ahead.
What technological advancement are you most hoping for, and are there any that you fear?
What kind of advance?
Technological science.
Technological advancement I'm most hoping for is the better method. A way to store energy. You know, in North Dakota, they have enough wind energy to power North America, Canada, US, Mexico, 5 times. But we can't get the wind energy from North Dakota around. So if we could find a better transmission line. How many people are into nanotechnology? Who isn't? So I met Rick Smalley, the guy who discovered, one of the guys who discovered buckyballs. Buckminster fullerenes. These are carbon molecules that have 60 atoms. And his idea was if you could take these things and stretch them, you could make these tubes. And I know people are growing forests of little tubes, but they're only 50 billionths of a meter long. If we could get them meters long or kilometers, miles long, then you'd have this stuff that's 10,000 times stronger than steel. I'm sorry, but that's what I said. 10,000 times stronger than steel. And he said to me on camera, when you get these tubes going, electrons travel through them at nearly superconducting efficiencies. So he said it's as though the electron falls asleep at one end of the nanotube in a dream and wakes up at the other. Man, if you could move electricity around like that, you could, dare I say it, change the world!